What on earth is a new player supposed to buy in Star Trek Online? It's a good question. Now that the game is almost 14 years old, there are dozens and dozens of regular ships, along with a whole bunch of premium ships, legendary ships, bundles, lockbox ships, promotional ships, lobby ships. It's enough to confuse anybody. So, if you're just getting started and you don't want to break the bank, and you just want to buy a regular ship, I've got 4 choices for you that I think you probably won't regret. My first choice is a bit controversial, and that's my choice for the ship I think you should get if you're interested in directed energy weapons, going pew pew with your lasers. And that is the Arbiter battlecruiser. Now, I can already hear some of you yelling at your screen because what you'd like me to do is recommend the Legendary Battlecruiser bundle instead. And there are lots of reasons to recommend that bundle over the Arbiter, and we're going to talk about those in a minute. But here's the thing. The Legendary Battlecruiser bundle is like $80 on sale, and the Arbiter can be had for about $22 when it's on sale. And if you're a new player who likes the game, and you want to spend a little money, you may not want to put that much into the game. And even if I were to tell you to hold off, to buy something else in the meantime, or to save up, I still can't recommend a better ship for someone's first purchase if they want to do directed energy weapons than the Arbiter. So let's go ahead and talk about that. The ship itself is not that good. That's not why anyone would recommend you to buy it, and it is one of the most recommended purchases in the entire history of the game. Chances are, if you're watching this, it's so ubiquitous you already have it. You bought it years ago, you've taken the trait for granted, and you haven't flown it in a long time. It just hasn't kept up with the times. It's almost 8 years old, and it shows. So why does anyone recommend it? Because of emergency weapon cycle. Emergency weapon cycle is one of the best traits in the history of the game. It's still one of the best traits in the entire game. And the only reason we have it is because they didn't know what they were doing back then. If they were to release this now, it would either require you to gamble, it would be in some expensive bundle, or the stats would be worse, or it wouldn't have uptime or something. Because as is, it's just overpowered as hell. Every time you use emergency powered weapons, which is the one bridge officer ability you're pretty much guaranteed to use if you're going to do anything with energy weapons, it gives you minus 50% weapon power cost, which is huge because every time you use your energy weapons, it drains your weapon power, and your weapon power determines the damage to a large extent that your energy weapons do. It also gives you 20% firing cycle haste, making your weapons fire faster, which makes them do more damage. And it lasts for 30 seconds, so you're basically guaranteed to have this effect at all times. This is the gold standard. Not only is it used on every ship that wants to take advantage of energy weapons, it's used on any build that uses energy weapons, including tanking, which is something we're going to talk about later. It is so ubiquitous, so prevalent, so omnipresent that you pretty much have to have it. If you want to spend a little bit more money, you should definitely get the Legendary Battlecruiser bundle instead. The Legendary Inquiry, which is the legendary version of the Arbiter, is just a better ship. It's one of the best ships for playing the game to do energy weapon damage in the entire game. Plus, you also get the trait called Checkmate from the KDF ship that comes with it, the Bortaskew, and that's a trait that a lot of EPG players like to use. Plus, it comes with a tier 6 ship coupon, so you could get one of the other ships in this video. It's a really good value for $80, but it is still $80. And if you don't know how legendary ships work, you also get all of the traits of the ships that is a legendary version of. So the Legendary Inquiry in the Legendary Battlecruiser bundle is also going to give you emergency weapon cycle. So that's what makes it just so much better. You get everything good about the Arbiter, plus a bunch of other stuff, and the ship is incredible too. The next ship on my list is the one I would recommend if you're interested in doing end-game torpedo builds, and that is the Gagarin Miracle Worker Battlecruiser. Now, this ship has a lot more to offer than just torpedoes. In fact, the ship itself is not that good at doing torpedoes. It's really an energy weapon ship. And a lot of people over the years have recommended it as a replacement for the Arbiter as people's first ship. There are reasons for that we'll talk about in a second, but it was the first really good full Miracle Worker ship you could just go into the store and buy. And to be honest, it still holds up pretty well as a Miracle Worker ship. However, the reason why I would recommend it for torpedoes, which probably has you scratching your head if you didn't already know, is the trait. And you'll notice there's a pattern with that in this video. And that's because one of the dirty little secrets about this game is that oftentimes the things that can make some of the biggest difference are the traits and consoles that you get when you buy a ship and then put on your other ships. So, what trait does the Gagarin come with? It has entwined tactical matrices. What does this trait do? Well, it's actually used in two different ways for two different play styles, and that's part of why it makes it so valuable. One thing it does for torpedoes specifically, and why it's even in this list and on this video, is that when you use fire at will or cannon scatter volley, which are AoE energy weapon firing modes, you get torpedo spread for free, giving you extra torpedo spam. But it does have one other use as well. Entwined tactical matrices allows you to get a free version of fire at will every time you use torpedo spread. So you can effectively use torpedo spread as a substitute for fire at will in order to keep it up 100% of the time. Now, the free version of fire at will you get is only rank 1, so this isn't really good for ships that are trying to do damage with fire at will, but for tanks, which we're going to talk about in a moment, it's really good because all you really want is to hit as many targets with your energy weapons as often as possible in order to apply all of your debuffs. Let's talk about tanking and the next ship on my list, the Buran Command Dreadnought Cruiser. What makes this such a good purchase for someone just getting into the game who's interested in the tanking playstyle? Well, aside from the fact that the ship itself makes for a pretty good tanking platform, especially if you're using entwined tactical matrices to get your fire at will uptime, since it doesn't have a lieutenant commander tactical seat, but it also comes with a pretty good console for tanking as well. I'm not going to go over that in too much detail, but the real prize here is the trait Unified Engineering. Now, there is a better trait for tanking in the C-Store, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but first let's talk about Unified Engineering. Every time you activate a Command Bridge Officer ability or auxiliary to the structural integrity field, you give yourself and, crucially, your entire team maximum HP, hull regeneration, flight speed and turn rate, and bridge officer ability cooldown. These are basically everything you could possibly ask for: extra survival, extra speed, and the ability to use your abilities more often. And since it applies to the entire team, it is really good for support-based tank builds, which have emerged as being some of the best style of tank builds. There is some competition for this choice, which could make it a bit controversial because probably one of the most important traits for tanking in the entire game is called History Will Remember, and that comes off the Narendra support cruiser. Unfortunately, that ship kind of sucks, and its legendary counterpart comes in the 11th anniversary bundle, which is not only expensive, but widely considered to be the worst anniversary bundle. So it's kind of a hard pill to swallow, and no matter which version of that ship you get, you're basically only getting it for the trait. And I think a new player is going to want a little bit more value for that, and one ship, no matter which one you buy, is going to give you a full tanking setup out of the box. So for your first ship, if you're interested in tanking, I'd recommend the Buran, but you guys let me know in the comments down below. Which ship should somebody go for if they're interested in tanking and they want to buy their first one, the Buran or the Narendra? Lastly, let's talk about Space Wizardry, also known as EPG or Science Builds, and the last choice on this list. This one isn't quite as close as the others, as I'm picking the Somerville, which most of you may have predicted, and also it was in the thumbnail. I'm going to go straight to the trait because, if we're being honest here, the ship is fine, but it has too much intel seating, and for most EPG builds, you do kind of want some temporal, so it's fine. But let's talk about the trait Spore Infused Anomalies. Now, a lot of science based builds are built on the background of universal console spam, but the traits are still important, and this is one of the big daddies, one of the most important ones. Every time you use a science or intel power, it does electrical damage to the enemies, and as you can probably guess by the fact that it's on this list, it does a lot of electrical damage, making it really important to a lot of those builds, and you can just pick it up as a regular C store purchase. So, if you want to get into science builds, it can be quite complicated. It's not quite as powerful, and the dynamics involved can be a little bit more subtle. But if you're just looking for a purchase to get you going that's going to have a big impact with a decent science ship to boot, you can't go wrong with the Somerville. A quick disclaimer as we wrap things up. No one ship is going to give you a complete end game ready build, but it can start you on your way. And also, you don't need a complete end game ready build for anything other than elite difficulty content. If you're just playing on normal advanced, you can use anything you want. You don't even need to buy a ship in the first place. But if you are interested in the more powerful end game builds, or elite content, especially since they just announced the random elite TFOs, then these ships are a good place to get you started. There are a lot of bundles and other things that might be a better value for your money, but I can understand why a new player wouldn't want to drop $100 or more on a bundle, so you want to start off with something smaller. It's a very complicated game, and there's a lot that goes into it, which is why a lot of us enjoy it. So I hope that this will help you in making a purchase. If you're thinking about what you want to buy for the first time, you only want to spend a little bit of money, and you want to get started on one of the four major in-game play styles. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.